Exquisite wooden buildings in Russia's far north testify to the historical importance of this forbidding region. I've reported from Russia for 3 decades and always wanted to come here. For centuries, this area north of Moscow and St. Petersburg provided the only outlet via the Arctic to international waters in Europe. The Volga River in Russia's heartland linked up to lakes and smaller rivers, ending up in the White Sea, once Russia's main line of defense with its biggest ports. The time had finally come to make the voyage, and my ultimate destination was the Solovetsky Islands, a 3-hour boat trip into the White Sea from the mainland. They hold a particular spiritual and political significance for Russians. They're intriguing and infamous. Long before Russian princes and czars colonized this area, others had been here. They left behind these stone labyrinths. 13 still remain on the islands. Their origins and meaning remain as disputed and mysterious as Stonehenge in England, and those to come didn't destroy them despite their pre-Christian roots. In the 15th century, Russian monks founded a monastery on the islands to expand the power of the Orthodox Church and the evolving state. Though cut off from the mainland for 6 months a year by ice, they built an impressive stone fortress with several churches. The remote Solovetsky Monastery quickly emerged as one of the most influential religious centers in Russia. Tourists now row through an elaborate web of canals and locks which monks hacked through the haunting forest. These provided transport for local industries and water for the expanding monastery. These islands have come to symbolize the best and the worst of what Russia can achieve. Tourist Dmitry Chishulin says something deep in Russians calls them here now: the pristine nature, religion, and the Soviet period.
My grandfather was imprisoned here. I only learned that this year. For a long time, no one dared talk about it.
After the 1917 revolution, the new Soviet government closed the monastery and turned it into the first prison camp. The substantial infrastructure created by the monks provided immediate housing and jobs for the new inmates. The island's isolation seemed ideal to keep the camp's existence secret and prevent escape. Solovki, as the islands came to be called, was the prototype for the system of labor camps that eventually devoured millions of Soviet citizens, what Alexander Solzhenitsyn called the Gulag Archipelago. Try as they might, Soviet authorities could not stop word of Solovki spreading, and the very name inspired terror. Until it was closed down in 1939, at least 80,000 prisoners were sent here. According to island historian Anna Yakovleva, half died from cold, starvation, or execution.
When we go in the forest to pick up berries or mushrooms, we always think that mass graves are everywhere.
The Russian government is now restoring the monastery, in theory as a historical monument, but 40 monks now live here, and the monastery wants to control the islands, turning them into a religious pilgrimage site. Father Porfiry is abbot of the monastery.
There are people who don't want the resurrection of the monastery. They see a threat to their business because they have material interests. They worry that they will lose, and they are right.
The island's 1,000 residents are those who stand to lose their livelihoods. Oleg Kadola, a tour operator here, is leading the opposition to the church.
The church has long said these islands belong to them and only to them. It wants everyone who stays here to go through them. It's about money. Their plans will kill the economy for the local residents, but many are afraid to speak out.
It's not an easy life here. Many live in former wooden prison barracks, still heated by wood stoves. Residents raise their own meat and vegetables, stocking up for the long winter when the only transport is by a twice-weekly expensive plane trip. But with growing tourism, many rent out rooms. There are new private hotels. 32-year-old Andrei Boldyrev takes out fishing and whale-watching groups. He's raised 4 children here. This is his home, and he has no intention of leaving. And there are those like Sergei Koltirin, with no financial interest, who believe these islands should remain open to everyone.
When you touch documents, letters, and testimonials of those who passed through this camp, you begin to truly understand what happened here. You are forced to ask why it happened and why we allowed it to begin here. We are still traumatized by these events.
Solovetsky echoes in a nearby forest. More than 7,000 prisoners were secretly brought here, 1,000 from Solovetsky. They were shot and dumped in mass graves.
And they didn't just kill the prisoners, they killed those who shot them, local people who drove them, and those who buried them, so no one would know.
This time, the Soviet authorities succeeded in hiding what they had done. All disappeared without trace until 1995, when dedicated historians uncovered documents leading them here to Sandarmoch. Sergei Koltirin tends the cemetery, where relatives have put up crosses, sometimes embedding photographs of their loved ones. He, too, has relatives who disappeared into the Gulag. He still does not know their fate. Ann Garrels, NPR News.